This is the Let's Go Win podcast with your host, J.M. Ryerson.
What is happening, you guys? Welcome back to Let's Go Win podcast. I'm excited because I have a good friend of mine on today. Dr. Ari Socher is a dentist, entrepreneur, podcaster, and spiritual gangster. After completing his dental training in 2009, he began to cultivate a life of self-exploration and personal growth. With the continuous drive to get better and hunt down the next challenge, he wanted to push the envelope of traditional dentistry. Dr. Socher served as the national spokesperson for Sensodyne toothpaste television campaign. In 2015, Dr. Socher founded Renumi Mobile Dental, bringing on-site state-of-the-art dental care to corporate employees at work. A perpetual overthinker, Dr. Socher has dedicated a portion of his life to explore the psyche, a life quest back to our authentic self. His Overthinkers Think Tank podcast serves as a platform to share his medicine with the world, for what good is medicine if it's not shared with the people? Dr. Ari Socher, what's up, brother?
Yo, man, I am happy to be here, JM. Thank you very much for having me on.
Well, it's truly my pleasure. Other than saying your last name that many times, because I don't know you as Socher, I just know you as Ari, so I will do my best to hammer that one down.
I'll give you a break.
So let's get into it, man. A podcast, spiritual gangster, dentist, entrepreneur. How did Ari get to this place? Where did you decide, like, not only am I going to revolutionize dentistry, but I'm going to do some other cool stuff along the way?
Whew, that's a loaded question. Well, I started off, dentistry was a passion to begin with. You know, I always wanted to do something with medicine. I knew I wanted to help people. I've always been a fan of just trying to help people through all their problems. And I felt that dentistry was a great way to do so to the next level, you know? Over the course of, which I'm sure we'll get into a little bit, but over the course of my training and working with people, I started realizing that there was more to life than just a professional goal. And I wanted to really explore a little more in depth, do a little more soul searching, do a little more finding of who we really are, what we're really doing here, and our purpose. So that's where things basically started.
Yeah, not that this is not to be rude to any other dentist, but you're an interesting cat when it comes to a dentist. Like, I think of dentists and I have a picture in my head. You're not necessarily that guy. And I don't mean that it's a compliment, because you lead a pretty exciting life. You do some pretty cool shit. So what about dentistry was it that attracted you? Obviously helping people. And I know you do. What I do want to get into is some of the amazing pro bono work, some of the amazing work that you do, because I think it's incredible. But what about teeth? What was it that just drew you into teeth?
So you know what? Like I said, medicine was a goal as a kid. And then my sister married a dentist when I was 16 years old. And he kind of put me under his wing. And he was like, listen, medicine's great. Traditional medicine's great, but it's dictated by the insurance companies. And there's another way. And what I learned to love about dentistry was that you're not sitting back and you're not writing a script and handing it to someone and saying, hey, I cross my fingers, I hope this works. I can really get in there and fix the problem with my hands, you know, which I thought was really cool. So that was really the driving force. At first, it wasn't so much that it wasn't teeth themselves, but I felt that, you know, dentistry was a great way to have a quality of life, to not be married to a hospital, and to have some flexibility where, you know, you can help people, you can change their life, and it's also that instant gratification. Mm-hmm. You know, it's that quick fix. It's not sit back and let's wait for the medicine to do its thing. I can get in there and you can walk out of the office better than you came in.
Well, and you truly do get to see a difference. Like when you're changing some of these smiles, you are seeing, here's the before, here's the after. And it's almost not maybe instantaneous, but pretty much within a week, within a day, sometimes you're seeing that transformation. So talk to me about entrepreneurship through dentists and mobile dentistry, because it's obviously unique what you do. And I think it's incredible, as I've told you off camera many times. But what is mobile dentistry, and how in the world did you come up with that?
So I was working in a traditional dental practice setting in private practice for a while. It was about I'd say 7 years or so. And it was just kind of started getting to the monotony was getting to me. I like doing cool shit. I like doing different things, and to go into the same office and doing the same thing every day was wearing on me. I also started seeing how, there was a large segment of the population that didn't have access to dental care. And I felt, what was the best way to bring that to them and to try to find my own spin on things. So that's what pushed me to walk away from a really secure private practice gig that I had, totally take a freaking plunge with no roadmap, no blueprint. I had no one to follow and say, okay, how do I do mobile dentistry? So, and that's kind of where I set up a lot of my life. It's like, okay, let's find where there's a need. I don't need a blueprint. I'll figure this shit out myself, and I'll grab my machete and get in the woods and find a way to make it happen.
Well, talk about that journey, because although we won't spend everything on dentistry, one of my favorite guests was a dentist. So you guys do some cool stuff. But this idea, you did figure it out, and you figured out how to bring it to people that aren't fortunate, that may not be able to get to a traditional practice and possibly can't even pay for that. So tell me a bit about that journey, brother, because it is unique, and I think people can learn from it and say, that's cool, man, because I think I like it anyway.
Well, to really get into my story and how I got into mobile dentistry, there's a long backstory to that, which we can get into, but it really stems from addiction. It really stems from my own personal trials and tribulations with addiction when I was younger. And I found myself at my rock bottom at my basically late 20s. And I started going to Narcotics Anonymous program. And going through that and meeting people in that, I started seeing how drug and alcohol treatment centers, how all my friends that worked at these treatment centers were sending me clients that are 20-something years old when they're super abscessed and swollen with teeth, and I'm just shucking teeth and pulling teeth on kids. And I was like, there's got to be a better way where we can go and catch these problems early. So that was one of the things that spawned Renumi, and allowed me to bring the dentist, is where we started, on site with some of the higher end drug treatment centers. That way clients can get in there. They're down and out. Let's get them put back together, not fix every little thing in their mouth, but let's get them in a situation where we can at least take away the time bombs, let them walk out of drug treatment without a crisis waiting to happen. Because, what happens? You have a toothache, you have a shitty day, you either go to a dentist and the first thing they do, knee-jerk reaction, is just give you a script. And then if you're lucky, you get back to treatment, most often you're dead. And let me figure out a way to really get them a little bit better off and give them their best chances to succeed in a life of recovery.
This is totally showing my naivety when it comes to this, but why is it when it comes to, I think of meth perhaps, because Montana has a big problem. That's where I'm originally from. Why is it teeth? What is it that the teeth get so greatly affected, specific with that drug? And I know there's many, but why is that?
And most people think, when you think about bad teeth and drugs, you think meth. And it's not so much the drug itself. Meth does have particular ways where it dries out your saliva. Your saliva is, not to get too technical, but your saliva is necessary to buffer the acids in your mouth. So when you're eating these sugary and acidic foods, they run wild in your mouth if you don't have that saliva to buffer it. But at the end of the day, I've seen equally worse teeth with heroin addicts as people who do meth. And what it is really the dereliction of addiction. It's the loss of self. It's that animalistic behavior where you're just waking up, throwing on clothes, and just trying to find the next one. You really don't give a damn about brushing your teeth. And I think that's where the destruction happens in people's mouths from drugs, as opposed to not particularly the drug itself.
So it's literally just not taking care of those teeth. And again, we won't spend the entire time on this, but I'm just curious.
Yeah.
Would you rather have people brush their teeth or floss? Obviously both.
Ooh, good question. If you can do one or the other, I would say brush your teeth. And at the end of the day, who the hell flosses? To be honest with you, no one flosses. There's very few patients that come and say, yes, I floss. So I would say brushing your teeth would be the benefit there over flossing.
I can't remember the book, but there's literally a book where they say, if we could rewind time, instead of making toothpaste look like it's so awesome and glistening and all the stuff that the commercials that we see, they would have people floss. It's really fascinating. To your point, I floss once a week, maybe.
Yeah, when you got something stuck in your teeth. But I tell patients all the time, I was like, listen, only floss the teeth you want to keep. And that's kind of where I leave it at that. And people realize, okay, maybe I got to start, putting this into my daily routine a little bit.
So obviously you do this amazing dentistry. You're bringing it to people that, addicts that weren't being taken care of, which is incredible. But you really got into human maximization. Before the podcast, You're doing some Wim Hof stuff, brother.
Yep.
So where did that all come from? Why is that important to you? And what does that bring into your world?
So again, that goes back to some of the life experiences that I went through. I got to a point in my life where I was around 28 years old. I got through college and basically got through dental school fully addicted to opiates, fully addicted to oxycodone, Oxycontin, all that stuff. And I graduated dental school with honors, still pushing through the whole thing, but got to the point where it finally came to a head for me. I'll never forget, I was driving to dental school one day, I was almost graduating, and I was at a red light, and I looked to my left, and I saw these people just laughing about nothing. And I looked, and I was like, damn, what are they so happy about? I couldn't find that in myself at all to find that happiness. I was like, yo, I'm in bad shape, So that's really where, what was the start of your question?
Just you getting into self.
Oh, the motivation. Okay. Yeah. So what ended up happening was, through that, I had a relationship I was in. I was engaged to get married. And the story goes, one morning I woke up. My fiance's at the end of the bed. She's hysterical crying. I said, what's going on? She's like, she was a pediatrician. She's like, I almost called the ambulance. You were gasping for air all night. I thought you were going to die and overdose. You need some help. And I thought I had everything under wraps. I thought no one knew anything was going on. And clearly that wasn't the case. So that started my journey of, I drove myself, I got in my car that day, drove myself to rehab, did a 30-day rehab. And this was around 29 years old. Got out of there, ready. I'm like, hey, I'm here. I'm ready to go. Like, you fell in love with the shell of a person. Like, you're going to fucking love me now. And she was from a very strict Cuban family who had no experience with addiction. And they were like, hands off kind of deal. And she walked away. We basically canceled the wedding 2 months before the wedding. It was a really, really challenging time. So I was down, like where they say rock bottom, I was there. So I found ways to build myself back up. And that's where really my life's passion is at this stage. I love dentistry. It's a great way to make a living, but I find there's so much more in self-exploration and really figuring out what makes us us, how to regain our true authentic selves and get back to basically the gnosis, the true knowing of what we're here for. And through that journey is where came forward plant medicines, came forward cold plunges, came forward Wim Hof breathing, and all those different aspects to add to my life to try to become a whole person again.
For those of you that don't know him personally, it's shocking to hear this because the man literally exudes life when you see him. So it's hard for me to picture you at the stoplight, not just loving and truly feeling fulfilled. Because I know people where the mask is on, they act like everything's great, but it's not. That's not you, brother. You are full of life. So I am having a hard time picturing it. But obviously, that's your journey. So talk to me about that, man. Journaling, meditation, float tanks, hot yoga. Mm-hmm. We'll get into plant medicines in a bit. Mm-hmm. But did you just start consuming information?
100%.
Yeah?
That's exactly what I did. I started off, when you're lost, you're looking for any help. I'm looking for anything. And NA is a great program, and the book and all that, it saves so many lives. But I needed something deeper. So I started with Tony Robbins. Tony Robbins was my intro to basically self-help and that whole aspect of things. And that slowly took me into Joe Rogan and Aubrey Marcus and some of these people. And I started looking for ways to change my physiology, to really restructure the way I was thinking about life and to start analyzing your ego and start reading about things like your dharma and your daemon. So your dharma, it's basically a Greek methodology of thinking of life. Your dharma is the reason why you're here on this earth. What's your purpose, And your daemon is your soul. It's another word for your soul. It's the part of you that whispers to you and will drag you through the shittiest parts of your life with the goal and pure love to bring you to the best aspects of your life, to bring you to heaven. And I started seeing how, your ego is this facade that you put on, that you build, these false layers that you build on yourself. But at the end of the day, the ego is just an acorn. And the daemon is the part of you that sees the acorn and knows that it could be the oak. And when I started looking into these things and figuring out ways to really start going in deeper and seeing why I was doing what I was doing, 'cause a lot of my addiction came from impulse. It was just move and react, and not thinking. So that started the process essentially of really just revealing, who I truly am and trying to get back to that whisper deep inside me of that wants the best for me.
What's interesting to me, though, is the only challenge I have with some of these is the labels that come along with being an addict. You don't do that. I don't recall you ever saying, I'm an addict of anything. Not even saying, like, you said, I guess I don't know how you say it, but you don't label yourself that way. I'm just curious if that is by design, because that is one of the challenges I have when people say, I'm an alcoholic. I'm like, you have behaved that in that pattern.
Right.
But when you succumb to the fact that I am this, that's where and you don't do that.
That's one of the hangups I had with NA. When you're in an NA meeting and you raise your hand to share, you say, hi, my name's Ari and I'm an addict. And I think forever, if you say that, you're kind of reinforcing that persona. And for me, I realized that the addiction in my life was just it was poorly compensating for the pain that was in my life, so it's not that I was an addict. I mean, my I have a history, I have addiction throughout my family, so I know that that's an underlying theme in my family, and there's a generational traumas, and that's a whole nother thing that we may get into about trauma. But I refuse to limit myself in saying that I was an addict, but more look at that aspect of my life and realize, okay, you know what? This was just the spark to push me in the right direction to grow as a person.
Yeah. And I mean, again, knowing you personally, you don't have what I would consider addiction tendencies other than to maybe talk to human beings. You love talking to people.
I love talking.
But outside of that, I don't think anything rules your life. And I want to talk about your morning routine, because even when we were in Turks and Caicos, I mean, guys, it didn't matter what we did the night before. You were up, you were doing your routine, right? Yeah. Talk to me more about what that looks like, because I know routines, it's overly talked about now. It's become which, by the way, I want people to hear it.
Yeah.
But what does your routine look like on a daily basis?
So I quickly understood that, and I truly believe that routines prevent relapse. Where if you're in a routine and you have something that you're doing every day, it's a lot easier to see when you're off track. There's like that warning shot. And for me, I'm very much in the idea, if you own the morning, you own the day. So I wake up and first thing I do, open the window, let the sunlight in my eyes, just get that circadian rhythm rolling. Okay, let my body know it's time to wake up. I head over to the kitchen, I throw on some Native American flute in my kitchen, get that playing in my apartment, and I take 16 ounces of water, this morning mineral cocktail that Aubrey Marcus speaks about actually in his book, and I use Himalayan sea salt and some lemon, and I pound that first thing. Then I head myself over, I have a little meditation station, I sit down, I have a book there where I put a quick gratitude list, because gratitude is a big theme that you hear all the time in drug recovery, and in life in general. If you send out if you're sending out a vibration of gratitude, you're sending it to the universe that you've already received things, which means that you're already open to receiving more things. And the universe in general, all it knows is to give. It gives and gives and gives. It's abundance. And we as humans in this meat suit of ours, we're the ones who limit what comes to us. We're the ones who say, we're only worth making $50,000 a year. We're only worth having an average relationship. So I get that gratitude list going. I do about 7 minutes of meditation. And then I move myself outside and I start moving. All right. One of the Tony Robbins things that I picked up was motion leads to emotion. So as you move, no matter what, if you're having a shitty day, you go outside and run around your block 2 times, you're coming back feeling like a different man. So that movement to start moving the day and start moving things around a little bit and getting stretched and getting loose. And then the way I end my morning routine is with my Wim Hof breathing. So I do 3 rounds of the Wim Hof method breathing, which is basically just an intense holotropic breathing, hyperoxygenating your body. And what you're really doing, we live in a world that is flooded with stress, whether it's your cell phone, social media, inbox on your email, whatever it is, you're constantly being inundated with things. So to remove that cortisol, you need to jack up your norepinephrine. So the breathing exercises do that. And then the last thing I end my morning with is cold plunge. So I have a 14 cubic foot freezer on my patio. I keep it full with about 38-degree water, and I climb in that thing for about 4 minutes every day. I'd say 95% of the days. There's some days that I go and that motherfucker wins. It wins, and I'll be like, all right, you won today, but I'll be back tomorrow. And and I love that part of it, because there's very few things that have a controlled stressor built into it. It's almost that feeling of like, I've never sky jumped, or jumped out of a plane, but I could imagine that before you jump, you have that fear. And I'm telling you, before I get into that thing, sometimes I'll wake up first thing in the morning, and the first thing I think about is I do not want to get in the cold plunge. And I'm like, this monkey mind is going, and it lets me not negotiate with myself. There's no negotiations. This is what we're doing, Ari. Okay, you want to look at your phone? Guess what? You could look at it in 35 minutes when this morning routine's over. Sit your ass down and meditate. Get your ass in the cold plunge. And then I find that bleeds over to the rest of my day, because now I'm in the gym and I said I'm going to do an hour in the gym, and it's 50 minutes into it and I'm ready to leave. And I'm like, no, bro. You said 1 hour in the gym. I don't care if you have to jog in place. You're staying here for an hour. And it's that mental override, which I think carries over into all aspects of my life, especially addiction and maintaining that part of my brain. I know that addict part of me is always sitting back here. I mean, it's a sneaky, cunning MFer addiction. Just the minute you put your hands down, you're getting punched in the face. It always happens. So it's one of those ways to keep me in check. And when I have those thoughts, and the meditation helps also, let the thoughts come and let them pass. I don't get held onto one thought and carry downstream with it.
So 35 minutes is about what I heard. And that's before you ever picked up your cell phone. Mm-hmm. So are you using an alarm to wake up, brother?
Nope.
You just waking up whenever?
No alarm, bro. I mean, dude, I'm high energy, bro. I am fucking shot out of a cannon always. I don't need, and I truly believe that if you have a mountain to go after every fucking day, excuse my language, but I curse out of passion, not just cause my lack of vocabulary.
You're good. It's a safe show.
I love it. Thank you. No beeping. But yeah, if you have that mountain to chase after every day, you don't need an alarm clock, dude. Like when you get up and you know that there's shit to go after and there's things to do, bro, I can't wait to get up. Like it's almost like you're at the point where like, I don't even know the next great thing that's going to happen today. So let me get up there and get at it, So
I'm just curious, high energy guy, are you getting your 6 to 8 hours a night?
Dude, I don't need, who knows if I really need it. 8 hours though is a dream. Like, maybe I'll be in bed for 8 hours. I found like the sweet spot for me is, 6, a solid 6. If I can get a solid 6, I'm good.
Now you are good. There is it's like less than 1% of the population can do 4. And everyone else, we need 6 to 8. And we won't get into all the reasons why. In fact, you can, as a doctor, could probably help me out with a lot of, like you're talking about all these, the hormones that are happening. Mm-hmm. But you talked about stress. You talked about cortisol. And it's funny, you are releasing stress, but you're also inducing it by getting into that cold plunge, going to the gym. So again, this is not your expertise per se, but you're trying to eliminate certain stressors and add in others. Talk to me a little bit about that.
For me, it's that, as my shirt says, it's about seeking discomfort. It's those controlled stressors. If you can get yourself in a situation where you can, where you can basically, you have these cells in your body that obviously you have strong cells that are strong and powerful, and you have cells that are weak. And the cells that are weak are the first ones often to get diseased. So when you can put these hormetic stressors in your life, whether it's cold plunge, whether it's sauna, whether it's hot yoga, whatever it might be, you're basically killing off the cells that can't keep up with this activity, which is what we want anyway. And you're leaving yourself with a foundation of solid cells. And
so mitochondria, we're ripping that stuff off. I mean, that's a big part of the cold plunge. Mm-hmm. And what do we replace? Our entire body replaces itself. Like it's pretty frequently. It's every 7 years.
I've heard every 7 years you're basically shedding cells and rebuilding your body, which is crazy when you think about it, because you got to remember the way your body is right now is built on the foods and the supplements you put in your body 7 years ago. So you're really eating all the food choices you make. When you decide to go to the gym, it's not what you're doing for yourself today. It's you're setting yourself up for 7 years from now.
I wonder if that's where they say when you swallow gum, that's with you for 7 years.
I hope not.
You know what I'm saying? Because that's what I remember as a kid. It's like, don't swallow that gum. That's going to be with you 7 years. But that's weird because we replenish our body. I've heard every 7 years as well. I never talk about this on the show, so I'm just curious. I have an idea of what float tanks, and we will get into plant medicine, but it is as close as you can get, is my understanding. Getting sensory deprivation, I guess, is what I'm looking for, without doing plant medicine. Has that been your experience, or why do you do it?
So float tanks for me is like forced meditation. You know, I, as this high energy individual, you know, I have a lot of work to still do. You know, this is just, I really believe I'm just scratching the surface of the depth of where I can go and how far I can really build and push my body. But for me, the float tanks is, like I just said, it's that forced meditation. You put yourself in a float tank. Have you ever done it?
I have.
Oh, it's incredible. So you put yourself in this situation, and you're basically, the real benefit there is you put your mind into a theta state. Okay, so these theta brain waves only really happen when you're a fetus and you're kind of floating in your mother's belly, and it's pure regeneration for your body. You know, your body's totally rebuilding during this time. So for me, when I go into those float tanks, and it's something I try to do, like maybe, you know, not that often, maybe once every 6 to 8 weeks, I'll be able to get into one. But it does put you in that state of mind where you can shut down a little bit, which I find, or used to find, more challenging, and let your body repair, you know, hyper repair, really.
Well, for those of you that struggle with meditation, I promise you, I've met a lot of human beings through my time on this earth. His brain goes about as quick as anybody I know. So for somebody to operate this way, to say sensory deprivation, yoga, meditation, it's not about shutting your brain off. I promise you, you are not shutting your brain off when you're meditating. Is that fair?
Yeah, 100%. It's not about, I mean, no one, like, here's the cheat code. You know, you're going to try to not think when you meditate, and guess what? You're always going to start thinking about shit. You know, it's just about, it's progress, not perfection. You know, if you can put little things in your life, you know, and I've heard this over and over again, and I truly believe it. If you do what's easy, your life will be hard. If you do what's hard, your life will be easy. So anywhere that you can find these little points in your life where you can go and you put yourself in controlled situations that you're not going to hurt your body, but you're going to stress yourself a bit, whether it's a hard ass workout, whether it's a cold plunge or hot yoga, any of those things. At the end of the day, you're going to be better off for it. You're going to be mentally tougher for it, you know, because you do hot yoga ever?
I do. Yeah, I love it.
And dude, I'm telling you, with hot yoga, like, you could stand outside and see like a CrossFit gym and a hot yoga studio, and you see all these, like, you know, moms going into the hot yoga. You're like, oh, that's bullshit, dude. You know, as you know,
they're monsters.
Every time I'm in there, I'm like, you know, I start, you know, that monkey mind starts going, and you're about 20 minutes left, and you're like, I don't know if I'm going to get through this thing, you know?
And for me, the elasticity is so much better when it's hot.
Oh,
like, I love doing that. I love and hate it at the same time.
I was going to say, you love it and hate it, right?
There's no way I'm like, yes, 90 minutes of this hell that I'm about to go through is awesome. But I do know coming out the other side how much better I feel.
Always.
But it is way more a mental thing than it is physical for me. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of what I'm hearing.
100%.
You know what's interesting, though, because I meditate I always put down, I meditate to respond, not react. But truth be told, what I'm meditating for now is to get clarity. Every single time, if I'm stuck, like writing a blog, whatever I'm doing that day, that's what I get from it. Awesome. So it's changing and evolving all the time. It's so weird.
Yeah, but it's great to condition yourself to know that, and that's where the magic is, where you could start sitting back and you're almost observing yourself, and you know when the Ari is getting stressed. You know when the JM is starting to get stressed, you know? And when you have those outlets where you can sit your ass down and get some clarity, that's where it's at. Because a lot of people don't know that there's these resources out there to do these things. And what ends up happening is you either just live a life of stress, or you turn to drugs and alcohol as a way to quiet the mind down, and you don't realize that you're just setting yourself up for more bullshit.
All right, brother. So plant medicine, ayahuasca and psilocybin. Am I saying that correctly?
You're saying it correctly.
Thank God.
Yeah. Or just magic mushrooms.
Is that what it is?
Yeah, that's the active component of magic mushrooms.
So how did you discover this? Was this more, you know, the Aubrey Marcuses of the world that kind of brought it? Tim Ferriss is
Joe
big
Rogan,
into it.
Aubrey Marcus, these guys. I mean, Joe Rogan's never done ayahuasca. He's more into that DMT and that kind of thing. But for me, you do enough self-exploration and you do some of the work and you still start seeing these hang-ups. It's almost like no matter how much you work, in my opinion, there's a lot of other ways to access these higher consciousness, holotropic breathing, and you can do some really deep meditation. But a cheat code is some of these plant medicines. So I got to a place after I already was, clean for about 6 years, and you start hitting a plateau and you start seeing some dark spots and some shadows in your life, where you want to kind of start smoothing out. And my first experience, is funny, was ayahuasca, which is like essentially equivalent to like putting on your first pair of hiking boots and heading to Everest. So for me, yeah, it was wild. So I went online and I found a friend of mine who's really involved in it. He was on The Real World. His name is Eric Neese. He was from my hometown, and he was a big proponent in the basically Native American spirit wheel and all the different ways to access this highest consciousness with plant medicine. And I reached out to him and I told him, listen, man, I need to get a little deeper. I need to figure out why I'm doing what I'm doing in certain relationships, why I'm acting the certain ways I am. I need a different perspective. And what these plant medicines have a fantastic way of doing is letting you look through one lens, and then you're totally shifting your lens for whatever, a couple hours. And you always come back to where you were to start, but you're never the same person. And so for me with ayahuasca, a lot of the ayahuasca is based on inner child work. So there's a little Ari and there's a little JM sitting inside you right now, and we need to take some time out every single day. And I check in with little Ari and be like, yo, how we doing, man? Should I pick up, PlayStation for 15 minutes and play it? Should I run around outside? Like, what do we need to do to keep that part of you happy and make sure it's heard? And so I did a lot of work with the inner child work. And then with ayahuasca, there's a lot of preparation behind it. It's 2.5 to 3 weeks of no salt, no sugar, nothing with any flavoring. You're basically eating brown rice and chicken, no sex, no masturbation, nothing to raise your energy levels. So you're keeping yourself super low. You can't even watch scary movies the last week. It's just like that. And then, so I had reached out to him. He got me in touch with some people down in Iquitos, Peru, where the Shipibo Indians are, which are the people who brought this medicine forward. This medicine's been used for 5,000 years. For those who don't know what ayahuasca is, it's a root that's indigenous to the Amazon that's been used for 5,000 years for ceremonial purposes. And basically what ayahuasca is it's beyond a plant medicine. It is a spirit. It's like an alien spirit that goes and it looks at your whole body and your whole soul almost as a cheesecloth. And throughout just being humans, we all have trauma, whether it's abandonment, whether it's addiction, whether it's sexual abuse or just any kind of abuse. And when we have these traumas that happen to us, there's little tears that are formed in our cheesecloths of our soul. And what ayahuasca does is it goes through and it just, as a seamstress, it patches them back together. So what I did was I was going to go to Peru. I found the Shipibo guy was actually going to be in the maestro or the shaman was going to be in Vancouver. So I flew out to Vancouver for a week and I spent a week with him and 12 other people at his home. And I did 3 ceremonies of ayahuasca. And, the overall, that's a whole other podcast to talk about the experience with that. But there was some real, one of the major highlights for me was I had a moment in my life. So when I was 3 years old, I had my lung collapsed from just a random mucus plugs built up in my lungs, and my lung collapsed. So they brought me to the hospital. They had to do a bronchoscopy, which is basically a tube down your throat to scope out your lungs. And as they were doing that, they gave me a medication called succinylcholine, which is used to intubate people. There's a 0.0001% of people that are allergic to it. I was one of them. Yep, I was that. And I got malignant hyperthermia, so my temperature shot up to 109 degrees, and I flatlined on the table, and I was gone. So they were able to bring me back. Here I am. And from that, I got through that whole situation. And when I was around 11, they decided to send me to Children's Hospital in Philly to do a biopsy on my leg to see if I was officially allergic to it, so they could for my brothers and sisters. So during the procedure where they were testing to see if I was allergic to it, they couldn't put me under because of that medication. So they put me under more of like a little deep sedation, not fully out. And I woke up during the procedure. So there was a sheet over me, and I opened my eyes and I saw the sheet on me, and I was listening to the surgeons talking, and they're talking about actually the 49ers Raiders Monday Night Football game. So I'm listening to it, and I see they're manipulating my leg and doing all these things, and I'm just saying, okay, like I'm really scared, but I don't want to say anything because I don't want to scare the shit out of these doctors and have a whole thing. So I'm just going to lay quietly and sit there till they finish. I sat there till they finished. I got out, told my dad. He's like, there's no way. Doctor came in. He's like, hey, doc, Ari said he heard you guys talking about the 49er Raiders football game. And the doctor was like white, like, oh shit, this dude was awake, you know? Apparently there's a lot of trauma that happens to that as a kid. So fast forward now to my second ayahuasca ceremony. Things are intense. The ceremony itself takes about 5-6 hours where you're under the influence of the medicine. And things were really intense. So I laid back during the ayahuasca ceremony, and within seconds, I was back on that table. I was back right there in the middle of that procedure. And I was like, okay, this is the inner child work. This is a chance for adult Ari to speak up for little Ari and say, hey man, we're okay, you're safe. And at that moment, I was there telling myself that I'm okay, I'm safe, speaking for the 11-year-old that didn't have a voice at that time. And I just basically screamed out loud, I'm fucking awake, to the doctors. And immediately this energy just pulled out of me. I mean, like almost a feeling like, you know, when you're getting ready to go to bed and you relax, and then you relax a little further and you just sink a little deeper into your bed. It was that to my life. And that was one of the moments that ayahuasca totally just changed me for sure. And it's powerful, man. I mean, there's so many aspects of that medicine that are just incredible, life-changing.
You know, it's interesting because you call it medicine, and that's what it is. But I always think of it so differently.
As a drug.
I do, man. And
it's a stigma.
It's just more my hang up with drugs in general, right? It's just they scare the shit out of me. But this profound feeling is so common when you talk to people that do ayahuasca. It's just crazy. I don't mean to derail the conversation, but Eric Nies was the original, right?
Yeah, he was in the first Real World.
So the dancer, the model,
yeah,
like
him.
But now he is totally spiritual. I read about this recently. That's so crazy, bro.
Yeah, man. He's a really good dude. He's actually out in Peru right now. He invited me to come out there. He's doing he basically rented a home out there with a bunch of people, and he did basically a month out there with 2 different shamans where they did like 3 or 4 ayahuasca ceremonies a week they're doing out there. And yeah, he's a great dude. Really good guy.
It's just, I guess, again, these labels of this whatever that we saw on TV, to think of him doing that now, it's so different than that persona that you saw on that TV show.
Oh, yeah.
I want to get into your podcast because you call yourself a perpetual overthinker. And so you literally are like, all right, I'm going to hit this right in the face. Here's my podcast, Overthinkers Think Tank.
That's it.
So we are overthinking. I mean, I've heard you and your dad, which that was amazing. I love the relationship that y'all have.
Yep.
But what is the Overthinkers Think Tank? So we are literally peppering an idea and just going all over?
There's that. I mean, that's just a general theme. I mean, for me, like you said, I'm an overthinker. I mean, my brain has having committees over committees at all times. You know what I mean? It's nonstop. And I've gotten better as I've gotten older and started to using some of these modalities to quiet my mind a little bit, to start being, you know, at the head of the boardroom table, essentially in my own brain. But what the Overthinkers Think Tank podcast is a combination of bringing guests on to talk about things in their life and just having general conversations like you do here, and a lot of just kind of what's on my mind. It's almost like a therapy session. You know, it's a way for me to let out some of the thoughts I have about everything, whether it's comedy, whether it's plant medicine, whether it's whatever it might be, just kind of general human optimization, and just a platform to kind of talk about those things and introduce some people to stuff that they maybe never heard of.
Why'd you start? I'm just curious because everybody's story into podcasts is so interesting to me.
Well, dude, I mean, I got so much shit to say, man. I mean, I got a lot to say, bro. And you know, the people that I'm dating, they can only hear so much of it. And I felt like this was a great outlet. And it goes back to, I think if I stop right now and think about it, it goes back to helping people. You know, it goes back to, if I could say one thing that can resonate with somebody, if I can say one thing and let somebody know who's having a really tough time, or maybe that they want to be a dentist, but they're addicted to freaking painkillers, that you could still do it. You know, that there is other things out there that what you're going through, you're definitely not alone. We're all going through the same shit. Very few people will talk about it, especially professionals. You know, I had a lot of time where I was hesitant to talk about my addiction because of my stature as a doctor right now. And I thought there'd be a lot of stigma attached to it, you know. But at the end of the day, I felt like, listen, people who know me for who I am today, and I'm so happy that I had the experiences that I did. I wouldn't change anything, because going through that time and you know, buying drugs on the streets of Newark, you know, so dealing with the lowest of the low, and then also working with, you know, the upper echelon and the higher net worth people, it kind of just did nothing more than make me just more of a well-rounded person.
Well, for what it's worth, brother, your vulnerability is one of your most attractive qualities. So don't lose
Thank
that
you.
because it is helping other people and it allows people to see who you are. It's important. I want to talk about your dad for just a moment, and that is because you and he have a unique relationship, at least from what I can see on the outside. I don't know it well at all. I've never met your father, but you talk so highly about both your parents, but certainly your dad, and he was on the show, and it's just comedy to hear you two. So what does that relationship look like?
My dad is that guy that every single friend of mine or anybody that meets him, he's the best in the world. My dad is the best in the world. As a dad, it can be challenging sometimes because he's who he is. He's fun. You know what I mean? He likes to smoke his doob every day, and he likes to, you know, he's just peace, love, happiness through and through. And, you know, we have a really interesting relationship. He has taught me so much about just in positivity in general. I mean, I had friends that used to make fun of me growing up because my home, if you came into it when I was a kid growing up, there'd be thoughts of the week all over our kitchen, you know? And there's one, you know, his thought was always, it would stay there, it would never come down, is do your own thing as long as you don't infringe on anyone else's happiness. And that's really a thought that he's always lived by and has always instilled in me that, listen, man, you know, be gay, be straight, be whatever you need to be, just be you, you know? And there's so much damage that happens to people when they aren't listening and they aren't being themselves, when you're not your authentic self, you know, the traumas and the damage that happens to you. And I'm just super blessed and really grateful to just be raised in a household that had that mentality, you know, where there was no judgment. It was just be you, don't hurt anybody while you're being you. And that's good.
Well, he did a good job, man, because you are you and you bring that positivity. I got to ask you, just because you're a guy that likes to read, I think you get a lot from those. So one of my favorite questions is always 2 or 3 of the most impactful books that have really shaped your thinking, who you are as a human being.
Cool. Okay, so let's see. Caught me off guard on this one. All right, let me think. So,
We'll come back to it.
Yeah, no, I'm just thinking of, I just want to narrow it down to 2 good ones. So, yeah, come back to it. Let me think of it.
No problem. What really inspires you today, brother?
For me, my inspiration is, it's really the work. You know, it's really the work. It's finding those parts that, not being afraid to explore like the depths of my consciousness. You know, there's so many people that I talk to when they think about doing ayahuasca or psilocybin mushrooms or anything like that, where they're so afraid they don't want to feel like they're losing control, you know? But at the end of the day, if you don't know your mind and every little corner of your mind, you know, like that's where it's at. So what inspires me is the constant drive to want to improve, to want to get better, not to be anybody else, but just to be authentically me, to shed all the fucking bullshit and all the programming that happened as I was growing up, or as any of us grow up, and all these labels that you throw on yourselves, and just strip all that away and be like, yo, this is what you are. You think you're this, but this is what you are. And I found that recently, you know, with dentistry. I love dentistry, but I got to a place where, you know, I was like, yeah, I was getting not bored of it, but it was just kind of like, okay, this is cool, but this isn't truly me. So then I started the mobile dentistry, and that was great too. And then I started thinking, you know, maybe that I'm at the position where 9-year-old Ari, if he looked at me right now, would say, yo, we fucking made it, dude. Like, bro, you have a cool apartment. You're a doctor. You have fun toys. You have video games, anything you want. You can jump in a plane and go travel somewhere. Like, this is it. But then you start realizing that maybe this is it for my adolescent ego. maybe this is it for my 9-year-old projection of what I think I need. And I think at that moment, when you have that moment and you start looking at your life and you realize, no, there's more. That's where you start listening to the whispers. That's where it goes back to the daemon. And you realize, no, this wasn't all it. Like there was something more. For me, it was a lot of theater. Growing up, I did a ton of theater. I love being a performer. I love public speaking and doing all those types of things. And I moved away from that just because I thought there was a stigma attached to it when I was younger. I was like, only, to be honest with you, I thought only gay guys do this. It was terrible. And I'm so upset at myself for thinking like that at that time. Because I took away so much joy that was in my life, and then it was just all jock and all playing football and going to college to play football and doing all those things and really losing that true essence of who I was, So now I'm at this stage in my life where I can realize that, okay, where I'm at is good, but there's so much more to be done.
Hey man, theater's still open.
Dude, I'm ready, bro. Let me put a guitar in my hand and put some people in front of me and let me sing. I'm a happy camper, man.
I mean, look, you have drive, you have interest. Don't stop pursuing that stuff until we're 6 feet under, man. Keep going for it. Oh, back to
so I thought of the book. So the number one book that I would say was Untethered Soul.
Yeah, that's good.
The Untethered Soul for me was the first idea of starting to recognize that we have a roommate in our head that's not us, that we are not our thoughts. We're the observer of our thoughts. And once you can get behind that monkey mind and start realizing that, that there's part of you that is thinking of something, but there's another part of you that's actually evaluating the thoughts, and you start separating those two and you start listening to your true voice. I thought Untethered Soul was a major one for me.
That's a good one for sure.
Yeah.
Brother, is there anything before we finish up that you're like, I got to say this to the audience? Something I didn't ask you, I didn't know enough to ask, and you're like, damn it, I got to say it.
Was there anything to talk about? Yeah, I mean, I think trauma. I feel like the idea of trauma is something that people really need to not be afraid to explore in their life. There's so many things that happen to us throughout the course of life that gets buried and ends up pulling the strings on our current relationships and the way we handle ourselves on the day to day, and we don't realize why we do it. And I think that, not to get too deep in things, but there's really cool where you have the fight or flight response. So fight, flight, or freeze. Something happens to you. These are things that happens, and you respond. What they found is with humans have great memories and even better imaginations. So when traumas happen to us, we remember it the way we think we remember it, and we never pass those feelings, those emotions. The physiologic response gets stuck in our body. It never gets cleared out. Other animals don't have this problem. If you look at a gazelle, there's videos of this online. A gazelle will get captured by a lion, and it's pinning the lion's pinning the gazelle down by the neck, and the lion will get distracted and it'll walk away. And they'll show the gazelle will actually start twitching uncontrollably for like 30 seconds, twitching, and then it'll shake and it'll run away. What that gazelle is doing is discharging this trauma. It's finishing the fight or flight response. And that way it allows it to go on and be a gazelle and not look around every damn corner for the next lion that's coming. And I think a lot of us have the same situation where we know things have happened to us where we did not get to complete the task and we didn't get to finish and discharge this trauma. So I really challenge people out there to take a good look at your life and don't be afraid to explore the shadows, because that is part of you. And that's going to limit your maximum potential. So really be brave and do the work and find your passion, man, and find your dream and find your goal, because otherwise you end up turning around and you're working for somebody else's dream, and that shit can suck.
No, the word release, immediately when you said that, it's like, you say discharge, I use the word release. You got to release that stuff. Brother, I appreciate you coming on, talking all sorts of cool stuff, whether it be dentistry, self-optimization, plunges, ayahuasca, plant medicines. You got a lot going, man, and I appreciate the way you show up in this world.
I appreciate you, man. Thank you for the opportunity.
Truly, it is our pleasure, man. It was awesome having him. You guys, a lot to take in on that. I mean, literally, I'm sitting there trying to figure out where do I go with this.
And
it's always interesting with you, brother. Well, definitely let us know how you liked it. I think Dr. Ari is the man. You guys will enjoy it. Where can they find you? Where can they connect with you online, brother?
So you can go on renumimobile.com is the website for Renumi Mobile. Check out Overthinkers Think Tank. That's on Instagram, or you can check us on, we're on wherever you get your podcasts. You can download us there. And that's where you can check me out.
Go check them out, you guys. You'll dig it. Till next time, continue transcending life. We'll talk to you then.
Appreciate it.
Thank you so much for listening. If this content is delivering value to you, please make sure to subscribe, rate, and review us. That helps us build this community, and that is what we are all about. Building this community as big as we can, helping as many people as we can, and deliver as much value as possible. Be sure to head over to letsgowinpodcast.com for information on my coaching courses, and make sure to follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn at Let's Go Win 365. Let's go win and transcend in life.
This is the Let's Go Win podcast with your host, J.M. Ryerson.